We're a minute early, but that's okay.
Will it tell us how many people are on?
Yeah. So right now, well, we already have 2 people on Zoom. I don't know on Facebook, but we'll probably get to a few many over there. And the chat. Steve and Martha coming in from Columbus. Good to have you back again with us. Under a flood watch. What? There's always something happening with weather over there. I don't think I don't think Columbus is a place to kind of go, hang out on a vacation, because it seems like you guys always have some challenging weather.
I sat on a chairlift with a package designer from Columbus just the other day. Nice guy. Steve and Martha, hope you get to meet him.
They opened an 18 Soren, huh? Nice. That's a nice wine. And that's a blend. Yeah, it is. Cab, Syrah, Tannat, Grenache, and Petit Verdot. Now that is a blend, isn't it? Very good. Very cool. Thanks for coming on again and watching today. We'll have a pretty fun show. Got a little surprise in store for everybody today. So we're just going to let the Facebook side of things kind of catch up a little bit here. So I'll just kind of let it go for a second. But until then, I'll have a little sip of wine. Because it is a wine show after all. And so we are having a little bit of vino while we talk this beautiful afternoon. I will tell you, here in Paso, we did get through that warm spell that I think had a lot of people a little concerned. We were talking about it last week with Molly and with Doug. And now we're back to some really cold temperatures in the mornings, at least near freezing, if not freezing, as well as
it's freezing up here.
It has. Good. Okay, good. Well, that will hopefully keep everything in dormancy and not necessarily starting to push anything anytime soon. So we might not be getting a lot of rain, but at least the cold keeps things in check, right?
Yeah, we need some rain.
We
It's
do.
gotta rain.
So Michael, you're over in the Adelaida district, I think. Isn't that right? Or is that Willow Creek?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, we're Adelaida.
Yeah. And so
we're on the cusp, but we're Adelaida.
And cold mornings, it's not looking like anything's waking up anytime soon for you?
No, I've been out I thought our Zen was gonna pop out if we had the weather continue like it did last week, but we're still okay.
All right. Scotty Saunders. Creeping. And Soren, for you guys over there, you're kind of over in the West Estrella district.
Yes.
Seeing anything as far as
No, it gets very, very cold out here as well. So and we're all pretty hardy red varietals out here, so nothing pushes terribly early. We're
excellent. Yeah, and you're really close to the river, so that's definitely a lower kind of elevation of where you're at, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, excellent. All right, let's get going here. Looks like we've got some people over on the Facebook side of things tuning in. So we are good to go. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode or issue of the Paso Wine Hour. I'm Chris Toronto with the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance. And today we are going to be talking a little bit about an event that we have coming up here in a couple of weeks called BlendFest on the Coast. Pretty fun event that celebrates the blended wines. And so for some of you, you're like, well, gee, Chris, every wine is a blend of some way or shape or form, right? But funny enough, a lot of consumers don't actually really understand that or know that. So we're going to talk a little bit about blended wines today. We're going to talk about BlendFest, actually. Sadly, though, I'll tell you right now, and hopefully this doesn't tune you out, but BlendFest is sold out. Just found out a little bit ago. Jen Bravo in our office here and Jamie Guzman told me that we just sold the last tickets to all of the everything. So good on us. So if you missed out on this event, though, there's more stuff out there. We are doing events again. So what do we call it? Spring release weekend is the next thing in March. And those tickets are on sale now. So don't delay and get out there and get onto pasowine.com to learn a little bit more and purchase some tickets. But we're still talking about BlendFest on the Coast. It's a really neat event. plan on it maybe for next year if this thing is of interest to you. For some of you that are out of state and can't turn around and make it easily, maybe this is going to be a winter little getaway for you, so you can get away from flooding or winter crazy stormy conditions and blizzards or whatever it might be that's happening where you live. You can come on out and hang out on the coast, the central coast of California next year in February. All right, my guests today, I have Michael Barreto with Oso Libre Winery. Say hello, Michael.
Hello, welcome out. My name is Michael. I'm winemaker here at Oso Libre Winery in the Adelaide district of the Paso, Robles.
Awesome. And we have Soren Christensen, Hearst Ranch Winery. He's also part-time fourth grade basketball coach. I'm taking him away from his coaching duties today. So we better have some good engagement so we can make it worth Soren's while. But welcome, Soren.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you, tongue-tied, sorry, for all of you for joining in. And yeah, Hearst Ranch Winery, we're in Paso Robles, but our main tasting room is in San Simeon over on the coast. So for those of you partaking in BlendFest, you're right in our neck of the woods. So enjoy.
Awesome. And so why did I invite these two guys on? Well, primarily because they've been a part of BlendFest in the past, especially Soren over at Hearst Ranch and the whole Saunders family as well, because they've hosted dinners. They actually were once the venue of the event before they built out their tasting room in that space. We actually used their big barn there right on the water to host our walk around tasting. They've also hosted things like excursions. They were actually one of our first thoughts of an excursion where I think you did a kayaking trip once, didn't you? And then from there, it's been hikes and stuff. So they've been a really, really great partner with BlendFest on the coast. Speaking of partners on BlendFest, we also work with the tourism organizations over in Cambria and San Simeon because this is kind of an off-season thing. And so basically we're bringing Paso to the coast to hopefully get people to go stay at the hotels there on the off-season and enjoy something kind of new and fun and different. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the main event as we go. Michael Barreto with Oso Libre Winery this year happens to be one of our panelists for our winemaker seminar. We do an actual live blending seminar where we actually have everybody in attendance. Each table is grouped together and they try to create the best blend of the day. Our winemakers, they pony up some wine that is unlabeled. We don't know what it is, but each winemaker actually has their own varietal that's actually specific, to them. And then they blind taste, meaning our audience, and they have to come up with the blend on their own. And why we do that is because that way, then if you're like a cab guy or something, you're not going to like make it a 90% cab blend with sprinkling and everything else because you like cab. It makes you actually use your palate. And so, Michael, thank you for doing that. But when I asked him to actually be on the show, he's like, oh, just so happens I'm doing blending trials that day. And so he's set up a little fun thing for us here in a little bit to go through. That's going to be, Michael, you explain it, but a trial, what are we doing?
So what we'll be doing in a little bit is I have one of our wines, one of our signature wines that we do that's a blend year after year. And so I have the components for our 2018 bottling I have coming up. And my cellar master and I are going to get together and just taste a couple incarnations of different percentages. And maybe you'll be able to hear how we kind of come up with our decisions on how we put together a blend.
Cool. I do want to talk a little bit about like blending philosophy on top of, as we talk about the event itself, BlendFest on the coast. And so I hope that both of you are able to share some of that. That's not necessarily, proprietary or anything, I hope. Is it, Soren?
No, not at all. And I don't think my approach is unique, but I really approach blending with a pessimistic point of view. So, and I'm sure Michael's in the same case in that we've been doing this for a long time. We don't really have any bad wines per se, but you're trying to poke holes, or at least I am, when I'm assembling a blend. Okay, the aromatics are fantastic, but the mid palate's a little bit weak. I really like the finish. What can I put in the middle here just to kind of flesh out the mid section of the wine? So it's really just trial and error. Use a lot of graduated cylinders and get a lot of purple teeth, but it's taking a pessimistic approach for me, at least. ultimately, when I'm happy with it, I feel it's a more well-rounded wine.
Yeah.
That's kind of the position I take. When I'm putting together a blend, I have my base component, and when you're blending, you're trying to make the best wine you possibly can. So you're starting off with good wine to make better wine. And I always look at, okay, this is my favorite, and just an example, the base is going to be Cabernet Sauvignon. This is my favorite, my best Cabernet I got. Now that I've figured that out, now I have to look at that wine and tear it down and go, okay, it doesn't have, the fruit that I want. It's a little weak. It's got this and that. And so then once I tear it down, then I look at the components that I have in my palate to build that wine back up to being the best wine I possibly can.
When you set out to blend, I mean, is it always going to be because you're trying to get these components, or you ever think like, oh, well, I do need to kind of fix something? Is that ever the case?
That's one of the two. So you're either trying to, like, for example, with one of our signature wines, it's something that you want to be, I mean, there's going to be vintage to vintage difference, but you want to replicate that. So someone who's comfortable or knows our Rojo del Patron, if they get it year after year after year, they can recognize it as that wine. But if you're looking at, say, a varietal wine that you're trying to blend, again, for consistency, you're looking at, again, kind of adding, filling in the weak points, smoothing it out so that it is a presentable wine one way or the other, and recognizable as something that comes from your property or facility.
This is when it becomes really all about you as a winemaker, though, right? I mean, it's your palate. Unless, do you, and Soren, for you, do you guys like blend by committee? Is it you? Is it, I mean, how does that work?
I really enjoy putting the wine in front of other people, and because I have a house palate, I mean, I've been in control of all these wines, I've directed them, but I'm not with the consumers the great majority of the time they try them. So I do like putting these wines in front of our tasting room staff and different people, and I'm certainly open to their opinions, because if it's just all me all the time, that's asking a lot of people to kind of sell what I'm really into. Real quick, Michael, and I apologize because I don't know, is Oso Libre, are you guys all estate or do you buy fruit?
We're about 50-50.
Okay.
So we have our 3 core varieties, and then everything else is just kind of adding to the palate.
Gotcha. And reason I ask is that we buy quite a bit of fruit as well. And sometimes we're working with a vineyard for the first time, and you don't know the tendencies of that Cabernet Sauvignon, let's say, it's, oh, wow, this is a lot grippier than the Cabernet we got from a different vineyard last year. So when you're doing your blending and trying to put together certain cuvées, I've got to work with something that's really thrown a lot of tannin at me that I wasn't expecting. And how can I soften that to kind of create the environment, where it was similar to the previous vintage, if that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Of working, when you're working with estate fruit or vineyards that you've had contracts with for many years, people always go, oh, does it change every year? It's really difficult. And I mean, there is that vintage to vintage difference, but working with the same properties over and over, I mean, there are similarities, and you kind of know what to expect.
Yeah, Soren, you bring up an interesting point about what the consumer likes, or what they think versus, I mean, when you're putting together these wines, is there some thought into like, oh, that particular vintage of whatever wine, man, that really sold well. I want to try to get close to that again, because it appears that consumers really dug that. Is that ever factoring into it, or is it just straight up what nature gives you and just putting that blend together?
I would tend towards the second part. We make 17 different wines, so many of them are smaller production. So if someone's looking for a really specific profile, oftentimes we can replicate that similarly, from one vintage to the next. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to make the most well-rounded wine possible, because a good amount goes into distribution as well. So it's just trying to make everything nice and even, keel, and delicious.
Yeah, I know I'm asking pretty softball, almost kind of rudimentary questions when it comes to that, but to be perfectly honest, you'd be surprised how many times people, even when our phone rings here, people have questions kind of like this, like, I had this wine and I want this wine, this flavor again. How, if I can't get it from that particular producer, who's making a wine that tastes and they're being literal, tastes like this. It's like, it's kind of funny that kind of stuff happens, but it does, it actually does. I want to get back to a little bit about BlendFest on the coast, because, you know, Soren, you guys have been a part of this for a few many years. And I just want to kind of hear a little bit about your thoughts on this event and just over the years, how it's kind of progressed and how you guys have been involved.
Gotcha. Well, I was, I think it was the original year, perhaps. I was on the panel like Michael's about to do with the blending session. And that was a real hoot to put all those different wines in front of people and kind of see them work in teams and the progression of wines. We were tasting some of them just incredibly tannic and then some just incredibly acidic. And you give them some suggestions and the wines kind of rounded out. And it was a really neat process to be a part of. But as far as seeing it on the coast, you know, I started at Hearst Ranch Winery 8 years ago. And it seemed like San Simeon at least was definitely a sleepier part of the Central Coast than it is now. The traffic we get through there is absolutely amazing. It's such a neat spot that a lot of Paso Robles wine tourists don't typically go to, but it's real easy to fall in love with it once you go over there. So I think it's a great event. It highlights, like you said, Chris, the hotels and restaurants in the off season over on the coast. It's just a real neat event, and we're excited to be a part of it again.
That's great. That's cool. And the history of Hearst Ranch really is over there on the coast with Hearst Castle, and we've made kind of a concerted effort in always including you guys, just because you have, I mean, half of that land is Hearst Ranch, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, the entirety of where our tasting room sits is all Hearst Ranch. Yeah. And the actual ranch over there on the coast is 83,000 acres. So it's bigger than the island of Manhattan. It's pretty crazy.
Wow. All contiguous, is that right?
It is. Yes. Yes. Actually from, so I mean, I'm in the Estrella district right now, but if I look west over the hills, like towards Lake Nacimiento, it's not terribly far from the backside of Lake Nacimiento to Hearst Ranch property. It takes 3 hours to get there from the coast in a Jeep, but yeah, it's huge.
That's crazy. It's not like a Yellowstone thing, right? I mean, there's not like a big ranch and the big, you know, all that happening there, right? And then do you get to go out onto that property? I mean, it's a cattle ranch, right?
It is, yes. Parts of it are extremely rugged. I've been fortunate to be on a great deal. Well, that's an overstatement. I've seen a lot more than most private citizens get to see, but it's an absolutely fantastic place. But yeah, to bounce around on a Jeep a little bit is really fun. The different animal species that are still hanging around, remnants from the zoo at Hearst Castle. And yeah, it's just a really special place. You certainly, when you're out there, you feel like you're seeing something that not everyone is afforded that view.
As Hearst Ranch Winery, do you guys ever do any form of tours or anything onto this land? I've been very fortunate myself to have been on the ranch way back, top of mountain, all that good stuff. Does the public ever get an opportunity to see that through Hearst Ranch Winery or the ranch itself?
We did an event with Outstanding in the Field this last summer, where we did this amazing hilltop dinner where it was 100 attendees per night, got to have a dinner overlooking the ocean on the ranch, which was amazing. And then of course, during BlendFest, we're going to be doing the walk on the point. Chris, I hope I'm not taking your lead here, but there's a gentleman named Thomas Brown that is a tour guide at the castle, and he also wrote a book, and he's going to be leading a guided walk out on the point. It's about a half-mile promontory out into the ocean, and be talking about some of the finer points of the area and the history. It's really interesting.
I think one of the neatest things about that hike, because it's been a part of everything from, you know, New Year's Day, polar bear plunge, and you go down to that beach and you go out to the point, to, you know, grade school field trips out there and all that kind of stuff. It's just a magnificent little piece of land along the California coast. But one of the coolest things is, as you get out there further out, it's almost like a scene from that old movie, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where it's got those rows of conifers that, you know, that used to be where, I guess, Hearst and his guests used to horseback ride up and down that point there, and could only imagine back in the day what that was like. But that's a really pretty piece of coastline that's actually open to the public. So you don't need to go on a guided tour to be able to see this point and to experience it. There's a trailhead off the beach, and it's quite an easy walk actually. So if you're in the area and wanting to check something out, that's pretty fun. You just go to the cove, as we call it, which is there at where San Simeon Pier is at. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that one, Soren.
There's a lot of bird life out there, and I'm only just suggesting this because I've walked out there a lot. If you're standing over a patch of white ground, move quickly.
Oh, good to know. I know I've seen a bald eagle or two out there as well, so it's pretty cool out there. So Michael, also part of BlendFest, you've done it now for a couple of years. I know you've poured at our main event as well. And that's been a pretty neat experience. I don't know if you have anything to share about that.
One of the things that we started doing a few years ago, we poured the BlendFest event, but then we also started running kind of our own blending seminar on a Sunday. So day after, people could come out to the winery, and we're not doing it this year. We actually moved it to the spring, but we do something similar, but it basically just for Libre Wine Club members. They come out, they get to try some wines from barrel and put together their own blends. But one thing that you alluded to earlier, I would tell people what the varieties were. And one time I had somebody come in that loved Cab, and it didn't matter. He just wanted a bottle of Cab, 100%, all done, all in.
Well, there you go. That's why we do the only sensory component of it, and then we reveal it at the end. And I did find these last couple of years how surprised people were that all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I really like Petite Sirah. I didn't know I liked Petite Sirah. So that's actually pretty fun as part of this blending seminar. All right. Yeah. So I want to get into, Michael, what you got set up here, because it looks cool. And I'm betting a lot of people are like, okay, come on, Chris, get to it. What's Michael got arranged here?
Okay. Well, so I'll just start off, Luis. So I got here my tasting panel expert, Luis Fernandez. He's cellar master here at Libre. And we're just going to kind of go through a really quick process we go through to put together one of our blends. And so the one we're going to talk about is our Rojo del Patron estate blend. This combines two components from our property, estate Primitivo and estate Cabernet. And the first thing that we always do, we try to get some similarity. We know it's not going to be the same year to year, but we will always try the prior year's components, or the prior year's bottling, just so we have a refresher in our mind of what it's going to be. And then what we'll do is we'll try the components, and then we'll start putting together blends. So for example, in this glass right here, I have a glass of the 2017 Libre Rojo del Patron. And it is a blend of 50% estate Cabernet, 50% Primitivo. So the idea behind this blend is to create a versatile wine that has the fruit component of Zinfandel or Primitivo and the structural component of Cabernet. And
hey, Michael, I don't want to sound completely ignorant, but if it's a 50-50 blend, I mean, isn't that just taking a barrel and mixing it with another barrel of different and just going like, okay, that works? I mean, explain.
That's exactly what that one is. But what we do when we taste it is for the goal of this particular wine is to have it to where not one of the varieties kind of sticks its head out more than the other. And so it does vary year to year. And when we get to this blend, I think it'll show up that way. So if I just taste the original. As I mentioned, the idea is to have the fruit component of Zinfandel and the structural component of the Cabernet, but have them intermixed or intertwined so not one really comes to the front. And so in starting our blending trials, I have our 2018 Primitivo and I have our 2018 Cabernet Block 4. So that's one of the lots of Cabernet fermentations that we have on the property. We have 4 different lots of Cabernet. Each comes from a different spot on the vineyard and gives us different flavor components. Block 4 is usually what goes into the Rojo. So right now I'm going to put together a 50-50 blend of the 18.
And that's where you always start, at the 50?
I'm going to start with last year's blend. So
Oh, I
like
see.
if last year was 60-40 or 55-45, that'll be my starting kind of component.
So Michael, have you guys ever played around with any co-fermentation? Maybe do, you know, a 50-50 blend of Zin and Cab as a smaller lot just to potentially play around with?
I love co-fermentations, but on Cab and Zin, I've never tried around with a co-ferment, but it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And actually we pick up, our Zinfandel or Primitivo and Cabernet usually pick within the same week. So it actually would be something I could try. Thanks for the this year's experiment.
Soren, is that
So-
something you guys do?
No, but it always surprises me. I was speaking to someone recently and talking about Zinfandel, how it's like a problematic child, and that you'll be checking it in the first, you know, okay, I checked it in the middle of August and it was 22 bricks. And then end of August, it was 22.9 bricks. Early September, 23.1 bricks. Then the next week, it's like 29 bricks. It's that kid that just goofs off when you're not watching it. So I have had Zinfandel just go through the roof and occasionally been tempted to want to co-ferment with something of lower sugar just to bring it back down out of the stratosphere. But that's typically what I use Petit Syrah for after the fact in blending. But just the co-ferment has always been kind of intriguing. I'm asking just because the blend of Cab Sauv, Zinfandel / Primitivo, if it's an annual thing for them, might be kind of fun to you know, do a little bit of that on the side to see if it works.
Yeah, one of the things about the Primitivo is you pick it, you get it in the tank, you get a number, you go, okay, I'm okay with that. And then it starts to ferment. And then 3 days later, the bricks goes up.
Yeah.
And I can't, but it'll happen. So now I have our kind of test blend of 50-50, which is half Cabernet, half Primitivo. And so after tasting it, I'll usually write down some notes, but just to keep track of this. Always take notes when you're doing blending, because if you don't, you go, oh, that one 2 ago was pretty good. If you didn't write down the notes, you'll never be able to replicate it. But we've got 50-50, and tasting it to me, it's kind of like the Primitivo is like still, it's a very fruity vintage for a Primitivo, and it's kind of showing its head. So what I'd like to do is dial back the fruit and then kind of maybe hopefully they marry together a little bit better. So go ahead and put together a 60% Cabernet, 40% Primitivo.
So
And when I'm doing the blending, I typically go in 10% chunks because that's easy. And then it's very much like going to the eye doctor. You go 1 or 2, and then when I get to where I'm close, then, you know, I'll start breaking it down to 5% or, you know, less than that if I need to. Chris had a question?
yeah, when you're putting together the blend ahead of time, maybe in your head, let's just say, are you already thinking kind of typicity, like, okay, Primitivo is this and Cab is this, and you know, does that already kind of weigh in your head as to what they are as a variety, or is it 100% sensory?
I think the question's going back to maybe at the birth of the blend and how we decided to create it for something to add to the portfolio. If that's the question. When we started, we were looking, you know, we have the 3 varieties that we grow on the property: Primitivo, Cabernet, and Mourvedre. And so those are ones we decided to stick with as core varieties, and being the only ones we would produce as 100%. Then we wanted to take our components and create new and unique wines. So we have like our Por Vita blend, which is all 3, and that's more the flagship wine and the wine that really expresses the vineyard behind it. The idea behind Rojo was to be something kind of fun and I guess versatile, just go with just about anything. So this is more the fun-loving wine compared to the more serious blends.
Cool.
So now, and just so everybody can see, using a graduated cylinder goes up to 100 mils. So that makes it really easy for us to do 100%. Luis put 60 mils of Cab, 40%, 40 mils of Primitivo, and now we have our second blend. So now we'll give this one a shot. And see how that one kind of masks the fruit. Now you get the fruit, but then there's also the structure and not quite the earthiness, but Cabernet kind of gives you the back end. Okay. And so that one is very, very typical to the 17 that we did before, but having the unique twist that 2018 threw upon it. And so now I got my notes here, and when it gets done, I'll just circle that blend number 2 is the one that we liked. And that way, when we're done, I'll go through my notes, put everything into an Excel spreadsheet, because that's where everybody keeps everything. And I can refer to it. And when it comes time, I can like move, find out how many cases I can produce, how much glass I need to order, corks and things along those lines. But we start here kind of knowing how much wine we need to utilize and where we want the goalpost to be. And I think with blend number 2, we've been able to achieve it. In our blending cellar, when we do blends, usually we can kind of fixate on what we want by either blend 4 or 5. If we get past 5, then we'll usually table that one and then come back to it usually the next day. You can get into blending at the end when you get to the real finite parts of it. You have to stand back and ask yourself the question, is it better or is it just different? And sometimes you're tasting like, oh yeah, I could, you add a little bit of Petit Verdot to it and the tannins kind of bump a little bit. You go, oh yeah, but is it better or is it just different? So that's where you got to really, have a focus on what you want the end result to be.
So you just blended it now. And I'm asking the most rudimentary of questions, but I just gotta know. You blended it now, it's in the glass and you're sitting there, you're swirling, okay. But what about after it settles? What about after it has some time to marry? I mean, is then there another trial after to sit there and confirm?
Yes. And so once we've done these blends 3.5 months ago. And so they've been aging and kind of sitting around. We're going to be bottling these wines in 4 weeks. So this is kind of our blend confirmation to see if there's any other minute tweaks or things along those lines that we want to get on before we actually get the wine in the bottle. And
then do you have another time at any point between now and 4 weeks from now from bottling where you're going to do another check and go, oh, wait, we need some tannin or we need some fruit or something like that?
This is the time now where we decide if we need to make any changes. And then the next time we taste it, it'll be in tank ready for bottle. And then at that point, that's when I get really nervous.
And so your blend before bottle, how long is it spending as a blend?
So we will take the wines out of barrel and we'll put them together the week before we bottle.
Okay, so they spend about a week, and then and then how long until you release them after bottling?
Sometimes a month, and then some. We're getting ready for a spring wine club release, so some will be out within a month, and then the rest will hang out in the cellar until October. Mm-hmm. That'll be the next release.
And there's other versions of this too, right? I mean, I'm going to guess you're pulling them out of barrel. You're getting them to be together. Maybe it's in a cube or something. I don't know. I'm not going to even ask what your filtering process is and all of that kind of stuff, but it's going to sit for a little bit and then of course get bottled. But there's other versions of this too, where you could potentially blend and then they go back into barrel or they spend more time, right?
Yeah, you can everybody's got their own philosophy and way that they do things. There are people that will do blending after 9 months, put it back to barrel, revisit it at the end of year number 2, and kind of completely change the blend around, and then go back to barrel, then out of barrel and into bottle. And
Soren, talk a little bit about how this process maybe is similar or different than what you do.
It's I'm guessing our volume's a little bit bigger than Oso Libre. We're about 20,000 cases, and I don't blend anything ahead of time. And primarily it's because we're trying to, Marc Laderriere, our amazing director of sales, he's constantly trying to open up new markets. So all of a sudden he says, hey, you know, Steve and Martha in Columbus love this wine. We're going to open up in Ohio. I need more Cab Franc in Ohio. If I pre-blended my Cab Franc with some Merlot because I thought it tasted good, all of a sudden I might be short and Steve and Martha might get pissed at me. So we only, let me see if they respond. We only blend stuff right at the end. And I don't do any intermediate racking. So this is a 21 Petit Verdot, went into barrel on October 27th, and it's going to stay in there until I get ready for bottling or to blend it. So our process is a little bit different. And Michael, am I correct? Are you bottling the 18 now?
Yes, we're bottling
Okay,
18s.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So yeah, so ours, another difference that I do is we're bottling our 2020s right now. So our wines are really, really quite young. So I'll do the same blending process that these two guys just did, but then I'll often revisit again in the morning. I'll just leave it on a tabletop with a, you know, glass over the top of it to keep any fruit flies out, and just try it the next day after it's had some aeration and whatnot, and see how that's going to evolve. Because going to wine with bottle, pardon me, with really young wines, they tend to evolve quite a bit overnight.
One thing that I always do is after we put blends together is I'll take a bottle home and just get it off the property, because you're tasting constantly in the cellar and a, you know, similar environment. So I can get it home where I'm kind of more relaxed and just, you know, is this enjoyable for me? Or, you know, have my wife taste it and she'll give her comments, and, you know, I'm looking for opinions just like you do. So
that's interesting that you do that. I've been fortunate to sit with, you know, like chefs developing menus and recipes and the like, and been fortunate to sit and taste through things. And while, you know, you might not have that sophisticated of a palate, say as a chef or a winemaker, you're still the one enjoying it, and their opinion is important. Do you ever share that even further than, say, just around the dinner table at home with your wife, or is that just kind of, you know, that's
it'll happen from time to time. If I'm back here and, you know, a wine club member comes in, I might give them, you know, let them try it. But I guess when you're on this side of the table as winemaker, you do have to have a certain confidence to make sure that when you're making the decision, you're confident with it, because you can have 10 people taste it. 9 will say this is the best they've ever had. And then that one person says, oh, it needs just a little bit more of this. And then it ruins the whole day. You're like, oh, I got to go back to the drawing board and start over. So you got to know, you know, opinions are great, but you got to be confident enough in your own decisions to make sure that you're moving forward properly.
when developing the blend. I mean, in a sense, you're looking at it and you're going, oh, that's a drink me now. But
Yes.
take into consideration aging and where it's going to be 6 months, 8 months, a year from now. It's sitting on a store shelf potentially, or, you know, in a wine club shipment later on, like where it might be at that point in time. This is from both of you.
I struggle with that a little bit, just because as we continue to grow, we're bottling 4,000 cases of Cabernet next week. And depending on how things go, it might not get to rest and bottle quite as long as I want. So I'm trying to make the best wine possible. It's grippy, it's got amazing body to it. But if it gets released in a month, it's going to be rather tight and closed down. So it is a bit of a struggle. I don't want to artificially age anything by aerating it too much. I don't want to dumb down the wine for when I try it in 5 years, you know, and be less proud of it. So I want to make the best wine I can, but I do have to understand that it is going to go out to market and you know, maybe encourage our distributors, hey, have people aerate this wine in the early stages. But it certainly is a balance that we have to work with.
And then our back to our philosophy of kind of our soil structure, things along those lines lead us. And from the beginning, we've always done 2.5 to 3 years barrel age. So the wines are softened and mellow and, you know, nearing maturity when we bottle them. So when they go out to be released, they're ready to be consumed, you know, upon release. You don't have to age them. Every once in a while, one will need a decanting, but most of the time they're just kind of ready to go. So we kind of look at that as this is the way the wine's going to present. It will kind of evolve and develop over time, but it's going to kind of stick with that same flavor fruit profile for the, you know, foreseeable future 3 to 5 years.
I like how we have such a kind of a wide disparity of production between the two of you, because even though we do, there's just so many similarities still, but clear differences as well. Soren, with you, I mean, if you could change some component, or if there was something different in your blending regimen to change that you could, should there be an instantly that available to you, is there anything you would change?
Being able to sit on bottles longer, especially I referenced Cabernet Franc before. That wine just seems to take forever to open up after bottling. I mean, if I could just get a guarantee that everything was going to sit for a minimum of 6 months after bottling, that would make me really happy. But you send things out into the world pretty quickly. Our rosé we bottled on December 21st, but that's not a big structured wine. On December 22nd, it tasted great. Whereas Cabernet Franc just really kind of closes down and gets very, very quiet for a while. And if someone's trying it for the first time in Columbus, Ohio, they're going to think like this wine's, it's kind of lame. So if I had one thing I could change, it would be just like the guarantee to not touch the damn wine for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's what's interesting. How long are they staying in barrel as it is though? Like that one behind you?
Usually around 18 months, give or take. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, to you?
We're about 28 to 36 months.
28 to 36. So a few more. How about in as far as blending and the like? I mean, is there something different that you would want to be able to kind of play with or do that?
I would kind of like to do blending a little bit earlier. And to what Soren said, I have to kind of restrain myself from blending too early. Being on the small end of stuff, into the scale, our blends are typically 450 to 500 case lots. And I'm trying to make sure all my wine club members are able to get Cabernet Sauvignon or our Mourvedre from time to time. So I have to kind of hold off to make sure I've got all my bases covered before I can jump into the blending pool as well.
Now, there's differences in blending when it comes to actual styles of wine. Soren, you're drinking a rosé, your rosé. I'm going to guess it's not 100% varietal. Is it?
No, it's predominantly Grenache, but there is Syrah, Tempranillo, Malbec, little touches Zinfandel.
What goes into blending a rosé? Because that's a wine that, as you said, it's not going to have a ton of structure. It's probably your crowd pleaser. I'm going to guess it's Saignée, but I don't know. But what goes into blending a rosé that gets bottled in December and then is, released not too long after, and it's probably a delightful and enjoyable, delicious wine.
Yeah, it's super, super good. I'm really happy with it. It's in years past, we certainly leaned a little bit heavier on Saignée. But since we've been producing more and more, it's more of it is direct to press. And the color this year especially it's predominantly Grenache, so a real pale salmon color. But as far as blending, it's super fun because I don't know what it is. I get pink bottles. I also try to fool myself, which isn't incredibly hard. I put pink bottles and they'll say, A, B, C, D, E, F on the table. And I grade them first without knowing their volume. And I'm just trying to take the wines for what they are. And slowly but surely, I'll cull some wines out and blend others together. And really just trying to build something that is, like you said, it's a crowd pleaser. I mean, the only thing I ask of rosé is to be delicious. And it's in California, the perpetual drought. It's 75 degrees last week, so it's rosé season in February. But I think it's super fun to do because it seems like the stakes aren't as high because you're not trying to make some like 96-point powerhouse that's going to age for 15 years. It's something that's going to be consumed on a boat in Lake Nacimiento and open another bottle when you're done with the first one.
But people actually, when it comes to their rosés, I mean, they can be quite discerning. I mean, you're still trying. It's not like
I'll put my rosé up against anyone else's. I'm just saying it's just super fun to make. It's just like it's happy and fruity and juicy and yeah, it's just easy.
Yeah. What about white wine blends? Because whites are, I think, a little different because they're still and I know people don't necessarily think of Paso as this white wine country, but I mean, white wines, though, especially from Paso these days, they're even having this kind of this thing that's like, oh wow, the white Rhone blends of Paso. I mean, is there a different kind of philosophy when it comes to white wines? Because they don't spend as much time, say, in barrel or whatever aging. There's a lot of different components. I mean, Michael and Soren, if you have something on that.
Well, we do a Viognier, and from time to time, I've been able to get my hands on, because it's difficult to get Marsanne and Roussanne. Different flavor components of those you can put together in different quantities, and you get different characteristics. So if you're trying to give a different style or something that's truly unique, I mean, that's one reason why we look to blend.
Yeah. And the Three Sisters Cuvée that is consistently a good wine. Soren, is there a different philosophy that you're using, just a different process at all from red wines with that wine?
I think the ideal is the same, really. Just creating something that's pleasing. Something that's becoming more and more challenging is with our really hot vineyard site. We don't grow any Rhone whites. And as they have gained in popularity, it's becoming more and more difficult to source white Rhone grapes from Paso, because there's not a whole heck of a lot of them. And with their popularity, those that are growing them tend to hold on to them a little bit more. I actually have a white wine that I brought over as an example, and I realized I made a little bit of a snafu on it, Chris. I hope you don't get mad at me. This is from the Santa Ynez portion of Paso Robles. This is from the Edna Valley portion of Paso Robles. And this is from the Santa Lucia Highlands portion of Paso Robles. But it's 100% Chardonnay blend, but it's a completely blended wine. We're getting stuff from different parts of this beautiful area that Chris represents, putting it in different barrel regimes and whatnot. But you know, it's 100%. Stop laughing, Chris. It's 100% varietal wine, but it's 100% blended. I mean, you're just trying to put together different expressions to give it more personality and more depth. So I think that applies to our Three Sisters White, which is indeed a 100% Paso Robles wine.
Okay, so let's talk about that though, because what are you getting out of Santa Ynez that's different than Edna, that's different than Highlands?
I mean, I did the Santa Ynez is the hottest spot that we picked from. So riper profile, you're getting more tropical fruit. The Santa Lucia Highlands it hung out there forever. It was one of the last things we picked, and it was up on a chalky hillside, so it had some nice texture to it. And then just the acidity that we got from the Edna Valley stuff was really quite nice. And then within that, we're using neutral barrels, once used barrels, brand new barrels, lees stirring. So there's just so many variables that go into it. And we're putting together 200 cases of barrel fermented Chardonnay. And it's just really fun. You can really dial stuff in quite nicely if you want to change a profile. Okay, a little bit more acid, a little less chalkiness, and it's just super fun to play with. So
it's probably not going to be a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. What happens to what's left?
We have another wine from the Monterey County portion of Paso Robles that is a huge bottling, and it gets the benefit of all the delicious barrel fermented stuff that doesn't make it in our real high-end blend.
Okay. I'm gonna need to try that area of Paso. Monterey, is that what you called it?
Just north of San Miguel. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that sounds like a neat area that I've never visited or traveled through while driving to San Francisco. It's I have to tell you, so I'm having a cab, and you bring up a good point about blending, you know, basically a cuvee, right? A cuvee, but it's all the same varietal. But I'm having your Hearst Ranch 2019 bunkhouse cab, which the rest of the staff also depleted me of already while I was on mute. Anyway, it's actually, it says Cabernet Sauvignon on the label. And again, I'm going back to being a little rudimentary here, but it says Cabernet Sauvignon on the label. But it's actually 77% Cabernet Sauvignon, 10% Merlot, 8% Malbec, 4 Cabernet Franc, and 1% Petit Verdot. Now, I know 2019 vintage is a while back ago, and I'm not sure when you put this blend together, but with 77 Cab, 10 Merlot, 8 Malbec, 4 Cab Franc, 1 Petit Verdot. Do you remember putting this blend together and kind of a little bit of what went into it? And then also why 1% Petit Verdot? Does that actually make a difference?
Well, at our volume, 1% of Petit Verdot is, you know, it's more than a few barrels. So what I'll typically do is put together the Cabernet portion that I know for sure is going to be the base of the blend. And then from there, picking it apart, just like Michael said, it's while we do like to blend, I am a traditionalist in that you're never gonna see Syrah in with my bunkhouse. Like it's only gonna be Cab Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec. And we also have some Carmenere that's about to come online from our vineyard. So I will stick within the blending kind of family of Bordeaux on that. And for us, especially, a lot of our Bordeaux blends, we do varietal bottlings of all 5 that we currently have in production. Malbec and Petit Verdot are typically bookends on both of them. For us, I love Malbec to really perk up the aromatics on the front end of a wine. I've called it like Botox. It just like everything gets happy and tight. And then Petit Verdot just has this amazing ability to lengthen out a wine quite a bit, with Cabernet Franc and Merlot kind of filling in some gaps in the mid palate. So it's a fun process. And certainly at our volume, I'm taking into account, okay, you know, our Merlot picked out real heavy this year. I've got a little bit extra. Where can I squeeze some in here and there? That's the less romantic reason, but overall, you have to be really happy with it. But I put that together just a year ago because we're about to bottle our 2020 this next week. So it was about a year ago. Not much has happened since then.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. You know, you guys, when you guys talk about your varietals and what you know, and as winemakers, I mean, you know, Soren, you've been a Hearst transfer 8, but you've been a winemaker for how long?
And this was my 23rd harvest this last year.
Okay. And Michael, for you?
21st harvest last year.
Okay. So you guys have been at it a little while. When did you come, Soren, for you, when did you come to the point where you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh, Malbec, it's like Botox, it's happy and tight. I mean, when did you all of a sudden find yourself going and saying, like, I mean, maybe you just made it up now, I don't know, but but anyway, where you know that variety, that's how it's going to work for me, and that's where I want to put it, and that's how I'm going to use it.
Gotcha. That more happened in the last 8 years since I've been here at Hearst, because we have a 56-acre estate vineyard. So as I've learned the tendency of the fruit I get every single year, you know, regardless, I know I'm going to have that color on that spice on my spice rack for, you know, I know that's an old hackneyed kind of, but anyway, so forming opinions about stuff that you get to work with year in and year out, I know I can depend on those certain varieties to add an element to wines that I'm looking to change in a little way here or there.
That probably comes, I mean, with the longevity of time of being at a winery for a certain amount of time as the winemakers, is like you really have, you know, institutional is such a fucking white word, but you have that knowledge though that you can apply to it and how you make your wines. By being there for a little while, you really truly get to know all of those vines and how they produce the grapes for your blends and the like, right?
100%. Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. Michael, you've been over at Oso Libre now for a little while, right?
I made the first wines on the property in 2003. So a little bit of time behind the vineyard. Yeah. And, you know, with the different blocks of cab, you know, which one's going to be more expressive. And, you know, there's the same vineyard site. So the differences aren't dramatic. But when you're on this side and looking at the way each one comes in, you can taste it. And so I mentally have, you know, when it comes in, it's just not just Cabernet, but this is the Quixotic cab, or this is the cab that goes into Rojo. And it's just, you know, kind of time after time, it's what the direction that the wine goes in. But just to kind of get back to blending Cabernet on the smaller scale, I mean, we do blending as well for, we have a Bordeaux blend that is typically Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot and Petit Verdot or something along those lines. But our estate Cabernet Quixotic is 100% estate Cabernet, no blending whatsoever.
None at all.
But so now I'm going to come back and say, when I put that wine together and say it's 30 barrels, if I've got 40 to 50 barrels of Cabernet Sauvignon, I go through each barrel and select, you know, maybe this one's got a little bit more new oak, or this one's a little bit more expressive flavor wise. And so I grade all the barrels. And so when it comes down to using or making the wine that goes in the bottle, it's a blend of the same wine, but each barrel is its own living, breathing wine entity. And so they go together to make that final wine.
So it's another version of blending. It's just not necessarily blending varieties, but what you're getting out of different lots and different barrels.
Correct. So
Yeah.
you could even have different lots or different blocks or fermentations to give you different characteristics. And so if maybe, you're lacking a little bit of color in one location, the clone that you have from block 5 maybe has a little bit more color on it, and you'll use that to kind of enhance the color of the final blend.
So I think what I'm getting out of this, and here as we're 5 minutes out from 4 o'clock and wrapping up our show, is that pretty much every wine you drink out there is a blend.
Pretty much, yeah. Unless it's one barrel.
Right. And then not a lot of people are getting that thing because it's just one barrel. So, you guys, it's been a fun discussion. I can't believe it's already actually almost an hour. And I really appreciate you sharing, your philosophies and what you do when it comes to blending and how you do things. I think that's so much of what is all about winemaking, yes, but all about Paso is the fact that we're able to share a little bit of our behind the scenes. And so, Michael, thank you for sharing a little bit of your behind the scenes, and Soren as well, sharing a little bit of your thought processes and everything when it comes to blending wines and how it works as a winemaker. So thank you guys. I really appreciate that. Wrapping up the show here, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening next. Next week, we do not have a show. Actually, we have BlendFest on the coast. We've got a bunch of stuff going on. I'm going to be a little busy setting some things up and gathering all kinds of stuff to, put on a different show, basically, as will the whole team here. And so we will not have a show next week. Tune in, look into pasowine.com for the following week's show, because I think we're going to be doing something about a book release about Paso. It's called Drive Through Paso Robles. It's out there on Amazon. You can go look at it. Yours truly was a partial contributor to that book. And so go check it out. They're going to be at BlendFest on the coast selling their books as well. We're probably going to be doing a show about the book they're following. So go check that out. Also on the blog right now, dog-friendly wineries, dog-friendly transportation, restaurants and the like, all from our area here in Paso. But go check out the blog, pasowine.com, and you'll see what's dog-friendly in the area. But believe it or not, actually, so I want to talk about that. Last year, that was like our most popular blog. And so the SEO people and JB here said, you should do that again. So we did. We refreshed it. It's, new members, different people say they have dog-friendly amenities. And so we refreshed it. So if you've already seen it or feel like you've been there, done that, go check it out, please. It's there and it's awesome. All right. And we helped edit it and all that good stuff. So go check it out. All right. And then podcast, we have Steinbeck Vineyards and Steve Glossner on the podcast. It's being uploaded as we speak. If you're into our podcast, Where Wine Takes You, please go check that out. New episode up and available. All right, right on. Thank you guys. Thanks for being on the Paso Wine Hour today. So Soren, Michael, cheers. Luis, wherever he went, Scotty, hiding in the back. Appreciate you guys being on.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
We're going to get back to work now and work on 6 more blends before we're done for the day.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to trying those wines when they're in barrel, or I'm sorry, when in bottle, not in barrel. Duh. And good luck to you guys on that. I'm sure you're going to have a fun time tonight.
Thanks,
We
Chris.
will.
How much
Thank you much.
spitting is involved in your blending?
I'll empty this probably about 4 times before I leave.
Okay, good. Good to know.
You got to keep the palate fresh.
Right on. All right, you guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you later.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.